Good morning. My name is Stephen Mwangi from the Mathare Social Justice Center. I'm sorry I couldn't join you today for this auspicious occasion, but I'm glad I can still make my contribution to this conference. I will be talking about the rule of law, the uses and abuses of the law in relation to human rights defenders in Kenya. It's through the liberal exercise of human rights that people are able to contribute to political, social, cultural, and economic developments of their countries. Actually, our constitution is a product of the struggle put up by members of the civil society against an oppressive regime that not only sought to suppress these rights, but one that had eroded the concept of a free democracy and established a system of tyrannical rule. It's under this system that Kenyans were forced to live under a one-party state. And at such times, the right to association and the freedom of speech was curtailed as to constitute a criminal offense. And consequently, engagement within the civil space was limited, and any person who questioned government policies did so at their own peril. It's during this dark past that there were massive assassinations of key civic figures such as Tom Mboya, Pio Dagama Pinto, J.M. Kariuki, among others. There are also reported cases of torture in chambers set up by the government against persons acting within the civil society, most of whom are referred to as insurgents and enemies of the state. Detention camps and cells were set up to isolate and also correct them. The very few who escaped the government were forced into exile. But with the dawn of the Constitution of Kenya in 2010, came with it the obligation of every person to respect, uphold, and defend it. As such, the activities of the civil society have been grounded as a must-have in ensuring constitutionalism and the rule of law. Further, constitutional bodies have been set up to ensure the enforcement of the Bill of Rights by both state and non-state actors. These constitutional bodies include the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, that's IPOA, the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, and the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, to name a few. All these bodies were set up with very good intentions, but most, if not all, have failed the people of Kenya in their constitutional obligations. Additionally, an independent judiciary has been established with a bid to ensure the effective access of justice by all Kenyans, but just like the aforementioned public bodies, they have failed their constitutional expectations. Admittedly, the atrocities suffered by the human rights defenders in the past have not stopped, and we now have a police service that has frustrated and continues to frustrate the efforts of the civil society. However, contrary to the shrinking of the national civic space, we are developing a vibrant space in Mathare in which the community can advocate for social justice and on which awareness is being created to ensure public participation in public affairs. We like to put it across that there is nothing about us without us. For years, Mathare has been a place where much violence has been allowed to go on without any legal redress for victims of human rights violations. The violations include, but are not limited to, land grabbing, forced evictions, police abuse and extrajudicial killings, police impunity, gender-based violence, and other economic, social, and psychological violations. Activities of MSJC include public campaigns, documentation of human rights violations, participatory action research, and referrals of violations to institutions offering legal support. At the juncture, we have managed to conduct community dialogues in the 6 wards of Mathare, documented 40 cases of extrajudicial killings, conducted an Art Against Violence graffiti workshop, a community mobilization against police impunity, a participatory action research on security concerns in Mathare, among other activities. In the pursuit of justice for victims, most of our members have encountered threats, torture, and even detention in police cells. One such instance is when Mwangi Nyaga, a member of MSJC, was severely beaten when he attempted to question a policeman against harassing a young man in the community. Others have been unceremoniously kicked out of police stations while trying to seek justice for youth detained in cells, or when trying to question the competence of policemen who work while drunk. Personally, I have been flogged after asking for the identification card of a police officer, and even for refusing to give a bribe. All these are but a hint into the state of affairs of human rights defenders working from the grassroots level and who cannot afford legal representation in a court of law. Just recently, the Legal Aid Act was enacted, but again, it remains very questionable whether it will be implemented in a way that suits the needs of human rights defenders. Kenyans face a challenge of rampant corruption whenever accessing government services, Instances of one having to give a bribe in order to get an ID, medical services, a police abstract, among other things, are not isolated. How can we be sure access to legal aid will be any different when it's left in the hands of an incompetent bureaucracy? At the national level, human rights defenders are facing multiple charges in courts, all brought up to incriminate their activities and compel them from engaging in human rights work, and further from publishing any material that is not in favor of the government. High numbers of pending court cases do not only come with extreme financial burden, but as well are extremely time-consuming. Since the state is not ensuring the space for human rights defenders, the general public also lacks an understanding of the role of human rights defenders. This is even true for the families of HRDs, who in consequence are not supportive of their work. This further limits the working space of human rights defenders. Generally, the feeling among HRDs is that the prosecutors and the magistrates do not appreciate or understand the roles played by HRDs in Kenya. This can be evidenced through the numerous malicious charges that have been brought up against HRDs we work with. Charges include incitement, illegal assembly, looting, and defamation. HRDs are constantly facing unreasonably high cash bails and bonds. This is either because the prosecution is ignorant of the role of HRDs and their personal circumstances, or they do not regard the law. Further, during protests, we have witnessed threats, torture, and killings by the police. Some killings are opportunistic, reckless, or even personal. Many others are carefully planned. It's impossible to estimate reliably how many killings occur, because the police do not keep a centralized database. But the police shootings are reported nearly every day of the week by the press, and the total number is unacceptably high. Evidently, the situation for human rights defenders in Kenya is grave and keeps shrinking with every detention, with every shooting and killing of persons exercising the constitutionally enshrined right to influence decisions of the state, and in other cases by trying to participate in those decisions. Even worse is the situation at the grassroots level, where there lacks media or international attention towards moderating the victimization of human rights defenders and communities. As such, our members work under very perilous grounds, where extrajudicial killings and everyday violations have been normalized. And in response to the needs of human rights defenders to reduce the risk involved in their work, the Brigades International has provided an armed accompaniment to most of the police stations, an approach that has helped alleviate the situation. Now, most of our members can seek justice with confidence, knowing that PBI is watching their back. This has gradually changed the atmosphere for us. Further, we have had a training with the international justice missions, where our members have been trained on the management of risk. Essentially, we are now able to work with partners towards the minimization of the dangers accustomed with social justice advocacy. However, the challenges of access to justice, threats, and discrimination continue to exist and act as the major kibosh against growing the civic space from the ground up. Again, I have to say, I'm very sorry I couldn't join you today for the occasion, but I'm very grateful to you all for allowing me your time to share the Kenyan perspective, which direly needs our collective contribution towards ensuring an enabling environment for human rights defenders. Thank you.